I was hurrying home from work. It was already dark, and there was a severe frost. After all, it was December. I worked in one city but lived in another, so I traveled by electric train. In the morning to work, in the evening back. The journey took a little less than an hour. Today was Friday, and my mood was elevated. Stepping onto the deserted platform, I began waiting for the train. There was no one around. The platform was on the outskirts, near an industrial zone, and there were usually few people around. But today, complete emptiness. I took out my phone and started searching something online. The electric train arrived somehow silently. I was even happy that it came about 5 minutes earlier. Such things rarely happen. This added positivity, and I literally jumped into the open doors. I wanted to warm up in the warm carriage. It was about minus 25 degrees Celsius outside. Entering the warmth, I clearly felt how my mood rose another 10 points. Moreover, the carriage was completely empty. You could sit anywhere. Great! Soon I would be home, and ahead were 2 days off, with lots of plans. Hardly had I settled down comfortably when the train started moving and picked up speed. I was going to check the internet, but no luck. Suddenly my phone lost all connection. I didn't expect such treachery from my faithful Samsung. 2 SIM cards, and both without network. I rebooted my phone. The situation didn't change. Well, this minor inconvenience didn't spoil my mood. I took out my headphones, turned on an audiobook, and leaning back, waited for the conductor. In my headphones, a voice monotonously droned, and I fell asleep. When I woke up, a thought flickered through my mind. Hadn't I passed my station? My heart started racing. I immediately checked the time. I'd been riding for almost an hour now. My stop should have come, but the train was still speeding along without slowing down. Outside the windows, night, moonlight, and forest. An endless forest on both sides. In the carriage, as before, not a soul. A feeling of unease crept over me. I looked at the electronic display with scrolling text. It was blank. Again, I checked my phone. No connection. I thought, I'll walk forward through the carriages, ask people what was the last stop. I put my phone and headphones in my pocket and went to the next carriage. Empty. I kept walking. I walked through probably 5 half-dark carriages. Nobody. My eyes fell on the emergency communication button. I approached and pressed it. From the speakers in my ears came a terrible screech and hissing, and I instinctively jumped back in surprise. Thoughts raced. I didn't know what to do. I looked at the emergency brake. It had been ripped off. My right hand went to scratch the back of my head, and then I remembered. My hat was left on the seat in the carriage where I boarded at the station. I hurried back to get my hat. On the way, I noticed that all the emergency brakes had been removed. My anxiety only increased. But if I had known what awaited me on my return path, I wouldn't have gone for anything. So, I overcame 3 carriages towards the tail, entered the next one, and from the opposite end of the carriage, it entered. Seeing it, I froze in the doorway. I broke out in a cold sweat. My legs nearly gave way beneath me. From my throat came a strangled sound. It was enormous in height and breadth, slowly approaching me on gigantic bare feet. The shape of its feet was human, but the size. Each foot was as big as children's sleds. In the carriage, one dusty light fixture was burning, illuminating the mystical scene like the moon, which seemed like a dream. The creature's enormous arms, with palms the size of excavator buckets, reached down to the floor. Its fingers were as thick as my arm, and it had to hunch to fit through the carriage ceiling. A huge belly hung over pants. This mutant was dressed in a conductor's uniform of unbelievable size, which was cracking at the seams from its body. The uniform was dirty and torn. Over its shoulder, on a strap, hung a large, worn leather conductor's bag. But the most terrifying part was the head on its shoulders. Enormous, bald, covered in scars, eyeless, with eyelids sewn shut with a mattress stitch. The mouth was so large that a medium-sized watermelon would fit inside it entirely. The monster was slowly moving forward, carefully checking each seat with its giant hands. It thoroughly inspected every space in the carriage. It felt under the seats, on the seats themselves, and even on the luggage racks. At the same time, it mumbled incoherently, snorted, grunted, and rasped. Sometimes you could make out growling words. "Show your ticket," and then, "Rrr, ah, yeah, ticket, ah, show your ticket." The carriage jolted, my paralysis passed, and I quickly turned around and ran back. I ran through about 10 carriages, maybe even 15, until a figure sitting on the right side caught my eye. My brain didn't react immediately, and my legs weren't obeying my commands to stop from fear. So I rushed past it to the vestibule and managed to stop there with an effort of will. I turned around, looked at the person. A man was dozing by the window approximately in the middle of the carriage. I rushed up to wake him. "Run away from here, otherwise we're done for! There's a monster!" I exclaimed anxiously. "So you met the conductor," the passenger said bitterly. I was stunned by his calmness. I opened my mouth to say something, but the words in my head got completely tangled. "Don't worry. Sit down. I'll explain everything to you," the stranger offered. His calm tone worked. My jelly-like legs gave way, and I sat down opposite him. And he continued. "Between us and the conductor are about 10 to 12 carriages. As you've probably noticed, the conductor is blind and moves very slowly. It takes him about 20 minutes to feel his way through an entire carriage, the vestibule, and squeeze into the next one. So he won't reach our carriage for about 3 hours. I have time to explain what's happening here." "What's happening?" I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. "I'm called Georgi Alexandrovich. You can just call me Uncle Zhora. I am a passenger on this ghost train, and now you are too." I caught my breath and studied my fellow traveler. He was about twice my age, around 60 years old, had an intellectual appearance with a small graying beard. On his head was a slightly crumpled dark hat, and he wore a dark coat, also slightly rumpled. "Why did you call the train a ghost train? And when will my station arrive?" I continued asking questions, choosing the most important ones. "Your station won't come. This electric train exists in a different dimension relative to our world," Uncle Zhora explained sympathetically. "The situation is this. We have fallen into a parallel dimension. This train sometimes stops at stations and picks up passengers. Actually, it always takes only one passenger, and there is no way to exit back into our world." "How is that possible?" I asked disbelievingly. "Look out the window." "What do you see?" he said. "It's dark," I replied. "Exactly," confirmed my companion. "In this world, it's always night, and the train speeds through an endless winter taiga. On both sides, trees, an endless coniferous ocean, and frost. I've been traveling for more than a month. Although, the concept of time here is very conditional, and nothing changes outside the window. Only occasionally are there stations. Abandoned, deserted, in the middle of the endless taiga. And after stopping at them, a new passenger appears on the train. And why didn't you get off the train at that moment?" I asked. "He who gets off remains at the abandoned station in the frozen taiga of this strange world. "You saw the conductor?" he asked. "Well, imagine what monsters live in this taiga. This train, like a reverse valve, lets people from our world into its world. But how to get back? I don't know." All of this sounded like nonsense or a cruel joke. Tonight, I had gotten on the train heading home, but ended up somewhere unknown. No connection. Can't get off. But there must be a way out. Listen, if we go forward along the train, we can reach the locomotive. There must be engineers there, I started reasoning. "That's useless," my companion interrupted me. "First of all, I'm afraid to imagine what the engineers look like here. And secondly, the train is infinite, or rather, beginningless. How is that possible?" I wondered. "Don't forget, my friend, we are in another world. The laws of our world don't apply here," he explained. "I've been moving forward through the carriages for more than a month. The conductor pushes us. In short, there's no beginning to this train, and it ends immediately behind the conductor. When he passes through another carriage, it simply disappears, like it dissolves into the air." "And who is this conductor?" I asked. "One of the natives of this world," he explained. "This world is inhabited by mutants, each designed for their own task. Besides the conductor, there are road workers here, station cashiers, and even peacekeepers. All of them are extremely aggressive, and we are just food for them. I saw how the conductor ate German, grabbed him like a bun, first bit off his head, and then ate him whole. To this day, whenever I remember, my legs go weak." "Which German?" I gasped. "German became a passenger a few days after me," Uncle Zhora began explaining. "I measure days by my wristwatch, since there's no sun here. Then, German developed a theory that you could leave the train if you ended up behind the conductor. So German decided to hide under the seat, hoping the blind conductor wouldn't find him. But the conductor found him. I tried to talk German out of it," Uncle Zhora lamented, "but he wouldn't listen. I was standing in the vestibule, watching, and when the conductor grabbed him, then that crunch of the skull. In general, it was a horrifying sight. After witnessing it, I probably ran 20 carriages, couldn't calm down. To this day, it gives me chills." Uncle Zhora fell silent, and I didn't know what to say either. I was trying to form a coherent picture of what was happening, but it was difficult. My brain couldn't grasp an endless train, couldn't understand how I had gotten into another world or what to do. "Won't you get hungry?" Uncle Zhora asked fatherly. His question pulled me out of the chaos of thoughts, and I felt a fierce hunger. "Yeah, a bit," I admitted shyly. Uncle Zhora pulled out a sports bag from under the bench and started taking out packages. "Here's chicken wrapped in foil, bread, tomatoes, cucumbers, a 1.5-liter bottle of soda." He listed them. "But where did you get the food?" I was surprised. "After all, you've been here for a long time." "This is another oddity of this train," he said while unwrapping the chicken. "The thing is, as we move through the carriages, we find various bags with food and water in some of them. They look as if a passenger got off and forgot their belongings. Where they actually come from, we don't know. It feels like someone doesn't want us to starve to death here." "And besides us, are there other passengers here?" I asked while chewing chicken. "Yes, Lesha and Sergei, but they went far ahead. Lesha somehow found a note saying that there is a portal on the train for returning to our world. An unknown passenger wrote that this portal constantly moves forward through the carriages, synchronized with the conductor, and always 1,000 carriages ahead of him. That's why they went looking for it. They believe they'll find a way out," Uncle Zhora said while slicing tomatoes and bread. "But I think there's no portal, so I'm not in a hurry. Outside the windows hung a huge moon, illuminating the pale ash expanse of the endless taiga. The wheels, like the hooves of a mythical horse, rhythmically clattered on the tracks. Two men in semi-darkness were eating chicken in an empty carriage of a strange, endless electric train rushing God knows where across the expanses of a foreign world. It's hard to imagine a more mysterious scene, I thought, crunching on a cucumber. We need to start moving, Uncle Zhora said, glancing at his watch. The conductor will be here soon. Oh, by the way, you haven't introduced yourself yet, young man. What's your name? He asked. Valera, and you can use you informally, I replied. Pleased to meet you, he croaked, getting up. Come on, Valera, let's get out of here before the conductor arrives. Uncle Zhora grabbed his bag, and we went further down the empty carriages away from the conductor. Count the carriages we pass, and I'll count too. Then we'll compare, he told me. And I started counting on my fingers as we passed each carriage. We walked through 7 carriages, and in front of the door to the 8th, Uncle Zhora suddenly stopped and raised his hand. I understood the gesture and froze. A moment later, he pointed his finger at the dim space of the carriage in front of us. I looked closely and saw a person lying on the floor between the rows of seats, facing us with their feet. In their right palm, something white was clenched. The person wasn't moving, only swaying with the motion of the train. From time to time, Uncle Zhora whispered, the train presents passengers with a surprise carriage. The surprises vary, but generally they're deadly dangerous. It's as if a malicious experimenter is conducting experiments on us. At these moments, one needs to be very careful. What should we do? I whispered. You stay here, and I'll go take a look, Uncle Zhora quietly ordered. He set down his bag, slowly pushed open the carriage doors just wide enough to slip sideways through, and stealthily moved toward the figure on the floor. I stayed watching, ready to help. Creeping closer, he bent down, touched the person's hand, and immediately recoiled sharply, sitting down on a seat. Then he signaled me to come. I cautiously approached. He's dead, Uncle Zhora said solemnly. He leaned down and pulled the piece of paper from Sergei's hand. It was a note from Lesha. I never really understood what happened, Lesha wrote. Sergei said he wanted, to go to the bathroom and stayed in the vestibule while I went to the next carriage. I waited about 10 minutes, then went back for him. But he wasn't there. I went back another 3 carriages, empty. I thought he decided to return to you and didn't search further. I went forward looking for the portal, and 14 carriages later I saw him on the floor, dead, without signs of violence. But how did he up ahead of me? Almost 10 carriages ahead. Uncle Zhora, be careful. Bleen, and what do we do with the body now? We can't bury it anywhere. Leaving it feels awkward. Maybe we should burn it? Cremation is kind of like a funeral, right? I suggested. And let the whole carriage burn to hell? What do we have to lose? Absolutely not. Don't even think about setting anything on fire. Uncle Zhora became agitated. We've already tried setting a fire in a carriage, thinking we'd burn it right in front of the conductor, and if the conductor burned, we'd get back to our dimension. But it didn't work out. As soon as we started making a fire from the seats, the firefighter materialized somewhere in the vestibule from the conductor's side. He was a monster, let me tell you. No better than the conductor, only he could see, wearing a helmet, and with a hook and a fire extinguisher. We almost died from fear when we saw him, and he put out the fire, hook at the ready, and chased after us. He roared like a wounded bull. Doors between carriages he kicked open. I don't know how many carriages we ran from him, and when I collapsed from exhaustion, I thought it was the end. But he disappeared as suddenly as he appeared. In short, Don't play with fire here. Yeah, there's not much joking around here. I was impressed. And whose baggage is that? I pointed my finger at the dark backpack on the floor under the seat. I don't know. Let's take a look, Uncle Zhora suggested. I placed the backpack on the seat, unzipped it, and we started examining its contents. Inside were several boiled eggs, slices of smoked sausage, a little bread, a couple of apples, and a thermos with hot tea. In an inner compartment, we found a little money, about 2,000 rubles, some receipts, keys, and a ticket for this train. Seeing the ticket, I came up with a plan. Uncle Zhora, the conductor demands tickets. Let's try to show him this ticket. Then we'll be on the other side of the conductor and might be able to get back to our world. Well, first of all, we only have one ticket, Uncle Zhora began reasoning. And secondly, it's dangerous. What if the conductor doesn't like something? He'll eat us and not ask. We should first experiment with this ticket at a safe distance. Here we both looked at Sergei's body. After all, the conductor, when he finds him on the floor without a ticket, will eat him anyway, and we can't hide him. Let's seat Sergei on the seat and put this ticket in his hand, and we'll observe what the conductor does, Uncle Zhora suggested. I nodded, silently. That's exactly what we did. Sergei looked like a sleeping passenger. We seated him by the window, facing the rear of the train, right at the entrance to the carriage. We put the found ticket in his right hand. Uncle Zhora and I moved to the beginning of the carriage and waited for the conductor, passing the time with conversation. Uncle Zhora, why was all the food in the backpack fresh and even the tea in the thermos hot? I asked. In this train, it's always like that. All the luggage we find looks as if it was just forgotten by a distracted passenger, he answered. Gosh, I feel like a rabbit being experimented on and fed so it doesn't die of hunger, I lamented. I wish I knew who this evil genius is who's playing these tricks on us. There's no genius at all, Uncle Zhora said. People know little about even the world they live in. What to say about the laws of neighboring worlds? You need to learn how to adapt, he continued. You need to try to understand what's happening here. Understand the rules of the game. And then, perhaps, we'll find a way out. Time passed. We heard the slamming of doors and realized the conductor had reached our carriage. Being in the same carriage with him was terrifying. Therefore, Uncle Zhora and I went to the vestibule and watched through the glass of the closed doors. This felt safer. We saw how the conductor, muttering, squeezed into the carriage and began carefully feeling the space. He ran his giant hand along the seat where Sergei's body was sitting and felt his hand with the ticket. Carefully took the ticket, pulled out some device from his bag, and inserted the ticket inside. A red light lit up on the device, and a long, unpleasant sound was heard. The conductor excitedly screamed, grabbed Sergei's body, and with one movement, bit off his head. I threw up right on the glass through which we were watching. Uncle Zhora grabbed me by the hand and dragged me away from the conductor. The experiment failed. The conductor's device didn't accept the ticket from our world. Despair mixed with disappointment overwhelmed us. Fear drove us to get as far away from the conductor as possible. At first, we walked very quickly. We didn't count the carriages, but fatigue took its toll. We made a rest stop. The carriages were different. Some were old, dirty, rusty, and smelled unpleasantly. Others looked new and clean. We sat down in one of those. Let's have some tea, Valera, wheezed the winded Uncle Zhora, taking out the thermos and a couple of candies from the bag. The lid of the thermos served as a cup, and there was a plastic bowl inside it. The thermos was for two. I drank from the lid. Uncle Zhora used the bowl. Uncle Zhora, you mentioned some peacekeepers. Is that like local police? Yes, something like that, he said after taking a sip of tea. I haven't seen them myself. Lesha told me about them. He arrived here earlier than me. So there were three of them as passengers. Himself, Sergei, and Stasik, half-beggar. Stasik had been living here for a long time before Lesha and Sergei. He said he liked it here. In our world, he didn't have housing, but here, there was free food, shelter, and he even managed to make homemade wine from found fruits and candies. One day they found a note. It said that you can call the patrol into the carriage by pressing the call button and, ignoring the noise, shouting, "There's an emergency in our carriage." And then it warned not to do this because two officers would appear and take the first person they encountered, and you would never see them again. And that resistance was useless. Their strength was incredible, and their appearance was terrifying. When Lesha read the note aloud, Stasik started laughing and showing off. He claimed it was all lies about the cops, that he had pressed the buttons many times and seen no one. Stasik was drunk from his homemade wine. He started cursing loudly, saying that he didn't give a damn about all the cops, that he could handle them with one hand, and so on in the same vein. Then, according to Lesha's story, Stasik ran to the button, pressed it, and shouted, "There's an emergency in our carriage!" From the loudspeakers came a screech and hissing, but Stasik didn't care. He kept yelling at the top of his lungs, "There's an emergency in our carriage!" Lesha said that he and Sergei wanted to pull him away, but then something happened that made them stand rooted to the spot. Two figures burst in from the vestibule. One was huge, reaching up to the ceiling. The other was about half his height. Faces covered in terrible scars. Both wore remnants of uniforms, blue shirts stained brown. The tall one had massive hands, so big that the sleeves had split. Both were barefoot but had epaulets. They roared like bears, red, wild eyes. "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request." As if all three had dissolved there. "Serious stuff," I muttered, not knowing what to say. At this point, we noticed that the train was slowing down. "It seems like we're arriving at a station," Uncle Zhora said thoughtfully, looking out the window. "And possibly another passenger." "But aren't passengers picked up at every station?" I asked in surprise. "No," he answered. "Sometimes the train stands for a long time, as if waiting for its prey. But not always does it manage to snatch another poor soul from our world. If we go out to the station and try to convince the passenger not to get on," I blurted out. "Naive, Valera. You won't see him. Don't forget, we're in different realities. He's on the station in our native world, and we're not sure where." Meanwhile, the train quietly pulled up to the station and stopped. The doors opened with a hiss and clang. The station consisted of a two-story building with broken dark windows. The empty nighttime platform was illuminated by a couple of dim lights. In the wall of the building, one single intact grated window could be seen, with a faint light shining through it. Above it, letters CAS were visible. The rest of the letters had either fallen off or weren't there at all. But it was clear that it was the ticket office. The atmosphere of abandonment and gloom was eerie. "Can I go out for reconnaissance?" I asked. "Sure, but as soon as you hear a voice from the loudspeakers, immediately go back into the carriage. Otherwise, you'll remain here forever." "What's inside the building?" I persisted. "Better not to go in," Uncle Zhora warned. "There are creatures in there that you won't be happy to meet. By the way, if you see anyone outside, run into the train as fast as you can. They usually don't come in here. Something about it not being allowed. But if they catch you outside, they'll eat you. Enough scaring me, Uncle Zhora. Now I'm scared to go out. That's right, Uncle Zhora said significantly. I never go out myself. Underneath this strange world hung an eternal frosty night. But I still decided to go out because I had formed a plan. I decided to walk to the ticket office and try to buy a ticket. Stepping out, I felt the sharp cold. Strangely, there was no snow anywhere. I noticed only now. Looking around, I saw the train cars stretching into the darkness on both sides. Is it really endless? I thought, slowly moving toward the ticket office. The ticket window was murky, but behind the dusty glass I could see the outline of a ticket seller. I couldn't make out details, and honestly didn't want to. Below the window was a rusted tray that slid outward. Throwing in 500 rubles, I pushed the tray back into the ticket office and said, 2 tickets, holding up 2 fingers. The silhouette behind the window became active, and suddenly, the tray with the 500 rubles flew back out. And from behind the window came incomprehensible roaring and swearing. I jumped back in surprise. My heart was pounding. I looked at the doorway of the building. I was afraid someone might come out, but nothing happened. Carefully retrieving the money, I turned toward the train and saw movement. Sneaking closer, I spotted the back half of a figure under the train. On all fours, sticking its head under the train, was a large man in a dirty orange vest. Nearby on the platform lay a hammer and tools. Under the train, I could hear its grumbling and metallic clinking. I guess it's a local mechanic. How did he not notice me? I thought in horror. I wanted to immediately dive into the train. But then I saw that from the back pocket of his dirty pants stuck out a red corner of an identification card. I guess it's the railway worker's ID. The idea flashed in my head, and a plan formed. I sneaked up behind the mechanic, quickly pulled the ID from the pocket, and dashed toward the train doors. His reaction was animalistic. He roared and chased after me. Losing seconds climbing the steps into the vestibule, I felt the mutant catching up. Pushing open the doors to the carriage on the left, where Uncle Zhora was waiting, I ran in the direction of the train's tail. The doors didn't have time to close before the mechanic grabbed my leg. Falling to the floor, I grabbed the leg of a seat. Standing on the platform, the mechanic was reaching for me with his long arms. Uncle Zhora, with a frightened face, rushed to help, grabbed me by my clothes, and started pulling me into the carriage. The situation became stalemate-like. From behind, the conductor was inevitably approaching, while in front of me, the mechanic's arm was pulling me out. The forces were unequal. Uncle Zhora and I understood that the mechanic would soon pull me out. We were struggling with all our might. Uncle Zhora was shouting to hold on, but my fingers were loosening. We looked at each other in terror. Suddenly, I remembered the emergency call button. With great effort, I reached for it, pressed it, and screamed, "Emergency in our car! Emergency in our car!" Chaos began. A pair of mutants burst into the vestibule, and the first one they encountered was the mechanic, halfway into the carriage and dragging me by the leg. A second later, I heard bones crack and the mechanic scream wildly. The vestibule shook as if a herd of elephants were dancing on the roof. The 2 goblins pulled the mechanic into the vestibule and tore him apart. Their growling and screams rang in our ears. Uncle Zhora, panting, pulled me into the middle of the carriage. Turning around, I saw that the mechanic's severed arm was still holding my leg, trailing along and leaving a bloody mark. The rest of the mechanic was flying around the vestibule under the blows of the officers, breaking the glass. We sat there frozen. Through the broken glass, we saw the two businesslike officers drag the remains of the mechanic into the passage. Exhausted, we sat on the floor. An indistinct announcement came from the loudspeakers. The train hissed as it closed its doors and continued on its way. "Valera, what the hell provoked that mutant?" Uncle Zhora gasped after catching his breath. I took the stolen ID from my pocket and handed it to him. "Well, what do you need it for?" he asked, clutching his chest. "I'll present it at the ticket office and get a couple of local tickets to escape from this damn train," I panted. "Well, the theory is interesting, colleague," he sneered. "Only you almost lost your head." "Come on, Uncle Zhora, everything worked out. At least now I can get us tickets at the next station." "Now I'm afraid to imagine how," he continued sarcastically, handing back the card. I smiled, opened the ID. It looked just as caricaturish as everything else here. The lines were a mix of Cyrillic and Latin characters, capital and lowercase letters randomly mixed. It was impossible to read, but it looked official, even with the owner's photo and a stamp. The face in the wrinkled photo was repulsive. Eyes, one higher than the other, expressed complete lack of intelligence. Lipless mouth bared large yellow teeth. 2 slits instead of a nose, and huge ears completed the picture. "Uncle Zhora, do you think the ticket seller will notice that the photo isn't me?" "Drop it. You look like twins. The spitting image." He laughed hoarsely. After this joke, we couldn't get up from the floor. Adrenaline receded and nervous laughter overtook us. We laughed until our stomachs hurt, until tears streamed down our faces, rolling on the floor. After laughing ourselves out, I tried to free my leg from the mechanic's arm, but it was difficult. The grip of the fingers was dead. The arm was torn from the shoulder, about 2 meters long and heavy as a weight. The muscles were locked tight. "Cut the tendons," said Uncle Zhora, handing me a knife. I took the knife and started cutting the back of the palm. The fingers gradually loosened, and I was able to free my leg. In the dim light of the carriage, on the floor lay a huge arm. Its hand, like a spider, swayed with the movement of the train. We wanted to leave. "Uncle Zhora, let's get out of here," I suggested. "I don't want to wait for the conductor." He silently took the bag and we went to the vestibule, avoiding the arm. Opening the doors, we saw a nightmare. The vestibule was filled with blood, dripping from the ceiling, running down the walls. On the floor lay broken teeth, bloody scraps, and a huge eye. Underfoot, shards crunched. Dents marked the walls and doors. What we saw chilled us to the bone. We became afraid to go further. What if those two were waiting in the next vestibule? Uncle Zhora entered the passage. The blood trail ended. He slightly opened the door to the next vestibule. It was empty. The carriage was also empty. "Valor, we need to go through 10 to 12 carriages to have a quiet snack and nap," he said without stopping. "No problem," I replied, limping. My leg hurt after the mechanic's grip, but I endured it, just wanting to get away from the bloody carriage and the conductor. After passing through 3 carriages, we found a large polyethylene bag and a lady's handbag. In the bag was expensive sausage, cognac, a 1.5-liter bottle of cola, fruits, chocolate, and a jar of olives. The pink handbag lay nearby, with a rhinestone label, NGA. Inside was a standard set, except for an electric shocker, which we took. Uncle Zhora transferred the food into his bag, and we moved on. After 9 more carriages, we took a break. We took out the food and had a feast with cognac. Then tiredness took over, and we dozed off. I woke up when Uncle Zhora shook me by the shoulder. "What happened, Uncle Zhora?" I jumped up. "The train has stopped," he said. "Another station." I looked out the window. In the darkness on the empty platform stood a concrete ticket booth, and under a rusty canopy, a couple of broken benches. The whole landscape was illuminated by a barely alive lamp on a pole. The ticket window glowed faintly. I stepped onto the platform, inhaled the frosty air. Uncle Zhora stood in the vestibule, watching. "Uncle Zhora, why is there no snow here?" I quietly asked. "It's supposed to be winter." "I don't know," he replied. "I've never seen snow the whole time I've been traveling." Looking around, I slowly approached the ticket window, put the mechanic's ID and 500 rubles into the rusty tray, slid it in with a creak, loudly said, "2 tickets," showing 2 fingers. Behind the foggy glass, a shadow stirred. Mumbling could be heard, and after a few seconds, the tray popped outwards. Inside were the ID, my money, and 2 tickets made of thick cardboard. At that moment, an announcement came from the loudspeaker, and I understood the train was about to depart. Grabbing the contents of the tray, I rushed into the carriage and barely managed to jump in before the doors closed. "So what?" Uncle Zhora asked eagerly. I handed him 1 ticket. "Unbelievable!" Uncle Zhora exclaimed, carefully taking the cardboard with a stamp and a series of random letters. "This is local tickets," he continued. "Yes, this one is yours and this one is mine." I showed mine. Moreover, they came for free. Apparently, the ID was sufficient. The train picked up speed. We went into the carriage and sat down. "Uncle Zhora, let's wait for the conductor. I'll stand in the aisle and show him my ticket. You will be slightly behind, also ready. If the mutant doesn't like it, there will be a chance to run away. If everything is okay, you follow with yours." "Good plan," Uncle Zhora nodded. "But I feel sorry for Leka," I continued. "Is he doomed to stay here forever? We can't catch up with him. He went far ahead," Uncle Zhora answered. "He and Sergei chose their path. Sergei died. I'm not sure if Leka is alive. But we have a chance. It's risky, but we must check." "Uncle Zhora, what's beyond the conductor? Why do the carriages disappear?" "I don't know exactly. Maybe the carriage itself becomes a portal to our world. We didn't want to leave this carriage. It seemed to bring us luck. After some time, we heard the thud of a door and saw the conductor squeezing into the carriage. His mumbling instilled terror. We wanted to run, but regaining self-control, I took the electric shocker from Uncle Zhora and stood in the middle of the carriage. Extending my hand with the ticket, I stood ready to run. Uncle Zhora stood about 5 steps behind. We understood the conductor wouldn't chase us, but his reaction and long arms kept us alert. Feeling around the space, he slowly advanced. In his mumbling, I distinguished, "Show your ticket." Finally, he felt my hand with the ticket, carefully took it, and reached into his bag for the machine. My heart pounded. I tightened the shocker. Taking out the machine, he inserted my ticket into it. The machine happily rumbled, briefly beeped. A green light came on. The conductor took out the ticket, mumbled "order," and handed the perforated ticket back to me. I took the ticket and sat down. The conductor moved towards Uncle Zhora. Seeing that the tickets were accepted, Uncle Zhora calmed down and also sat down. I watched from behind the monster. Uncle Zhora also successfully passed the inspection. The conductor moved to the vestibule, felt around it, and went into the next carriage. For some time, we sat dazed, not understanding what to do. Our carriage didn't disappear. Nothing changed. The train continued on its way. Then Uncle Zhora stood up and approached me. We looked at each other. "What now?" I whispered. "I don't know," he answered. "Let's check the previous carriage. Maybe it disappeared," I suggested. We went to check. Entering the vestibule of the neighboring carriage, we froze. The carriage was lit, and there were people inside. The second wave of numbness overcame us. We stood in the vestibule and looked through the glass at the passengers. There were only a few: a young couple with a restless girl, a serious man with a briefcase, two gossiping old ladies. I don't know how long we stood there, but Uncle Zhora was the first to regain consciousness. "It's not understandable," he drawled. "Have we returned? And why didn't our carriage disappear?" His face expressed disbelief, as if he suspected a trick. Then he slowly turned around and went back to our carriage, opened the doors to the vestibule, and we saw that there was also light there, and passengers were riding. A minute ago, this was an empty, dark carriage of the ghost train, and now, passengers. "Yeah," I replied. "It turns out this is how it works. You have to move to another carriage to get back to our world." Uncle Zhora stepped into the carriage. I followed him. Slowly, we walked down the aisle, looking at the people, then into another carriage, then another. We looked absurd, staring at people. Gradually, we realized we had escaped from the horrible world. The people around us were real. Uncle Zhora turned to me. There were tears in his eyes. Obviously, he had lost hope of returning. "We did it," he said and hugged me fatherly. I hugged him too. Joy overwhelmed us. Our legs became wobbly. We sat down. Our faces were glowing. The train slowed down. A female voice announced the stop, 660th kilometer. The next one was Liski. We still didn't know where we were. Everyone entered the ghost train from different cities, but we could only exit here, at the 660th kilometer. This was exactly where the reverse portal was. It was dark outside, but this was already another train, and we knew where we were going. This was our world.